Hello everyone!
Hello!
Welcome back to our channel. I'm Miley.
And I'm Eric.
And I just finished a workout, so apologies for my messy hair and sweaty face, but you know what? Good for me for working out.
And this is just how I look.
So we are so happy that you have joined us here today. If you are a returning viewer, thank you for supporting our channel. Don't forget to like this video and comment down below whatever you want to say that's within the confines of YouTube's regulations. If you are new to this channel,
Welcome!
what should they do, Scrimp?
They should smash that subscribe button!
Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps our channel grow.
Yeah, and there's a video that kind of, after you watch this one, you may want to go check out about the process of what we're going to talk about.
Yes.
Here. So
Great
go
plug.
check out that video.
I will link it down below. It's called We Tried No Phones at Bedtime for 30 Days.
And in the corner, is that a thing that still happens with YouTube?
No, I don't know how to do that. I'm not that savvy.
I can teach you.
Okay.
Look for the corner.
Just I'll link it down below.
Right.
All right, so without further ado, we are starting a new series on this channel that we are both so excited about.
Woo.
We are every month going to talk through all of the books that each one of us read, and we're going to give very quick synopses. Synopses?
Yeah,
That
you
sounds
nailed it.
wrong. Killed it. And let you know if they are recommendations, if we think it's worth the read, or if we think it's skippable. So.
Yeah.
This is our July reading list. Because we did this challenge that once again is linked down below for you to watch right after this video.
Or maybe in the corner.
No, it won't be in the corner. I don't know how to do that. We got through a lot of books this month. We are starting this new
series.
Thank you. Where we every month tell you about the books we've read. So without further ado, we're gonna jump right in. Scrimp, you wanna go first, bud?
Yeah, I don't have a physical copy of this book because I read it on my Kindle. It's called The Poppy War. It is a great book, not young adult, almost say young adult, features young adults as the main characters. It is kind of like a fantasy coming of age story, but set in a fictionalized version of China. So it's a really cool non-Western fantasy story. And the way magic works is really interesting. So if you like young adult fantasy, but want some potty language thrown in there, then check out Poppy War.
If you are an adult who
Yes.
likes reading young adult fiction.
Yeah.
Okay, the first book that I read, and actually this was the first book that I read in the month of July, is called Memoirs of an Ex-Prom Queen. This is based on the author's real life situation. It's not really a retelling of her specific story, but it's basically like a feminist manifesto. It highlights through this young woman's life in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, kind of her coming of age story in a time of oppression of women to a time when women were making groundbreaking decisions and coming into their own and figuring out their voice and fighting against the oppression that they had faced. And so it highlights a lot of sexism. There's a lot of the book that just makes me so angry, but it is definitely worth the read, especially if you're a man, and especially if you're a young woman who wants to learn more about what it was like for women of the past and see how far we've come and be so thankful for the women that kind of forged the path for us. It's a great read. It's really awesome. I would for sure recommend it.
My next book that I read, going kind of in order, is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. Phenomenal book. She is a very highly regarded author, won 3 Hugo Awards in a row, which nobody's ever done before. Not a young adult novel, just fiction, kind of urban fantasy, which I don't want to give it away because it's kind of a really cool twist, but it ties into a fantasy author of the past in a really interesting way. What you're going to notice about my books, like starting with Poppy War and going through a lot of them, is I was really trying to read more women of color and really being intentional about that. Highly recommend this book. It's the first of a series, but it just came out in March, so you have to wait for the next one. Existential threat threatening New York City. Group of people come together to try to stop it. Really good read, fun read.
Awesome. My next book that I read was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. So I had never read any Agatha Christie novels before, which surprised me greatly, not only because I like a good classic, but because she writes lots of murder mysteries, and that is like total my genre. Like, I love to scare myself. I love a good murder mystery and a twist at the end and a whodunit. This ticks all those boxes, and it is a fantastic, easy freaking read. Excuse Pippa. It's a really fast read. I think I read it in like a day and a half, maybe. Basically, it's about 10 people who mysteriously get invited to this rich island for purposes that are sort of explained to them and sort of not, and they all kind of take a chance to decide to go. And then it becomes very hauntingly clear why they are all called to the island, and they definitely regret the decision to go. So, totally pick it up, worth the read, super fast, super easy. You will not regret it, especially if you like mysteries.
Next book that I read is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, and this is a young adult fantasy. If you have teenagers that you want to get into reading, this is a phenomenal book. It is written by a Nigerian American immigrant, and it is set in a fantasyized Nigeria.
Fantasyized. That's a word.
But once again, it is a coming of age story through a magical world. But it is very much infused with anti-racist themes, and not innately racism, but colorism is a big part of the story being told in this book and kind of infused in the entire world. So this was a very good read, and the way it ended, I immediately ordered the sequel. Haven't read it yet, but I'm excited to read it because the book is very, very good.
The next book that I read is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This book is so good, you guys. Like Eric said, we've both been intentionally trying to read books that highlight racism and help us educate ourselves. We've been really trying to purchase books to support Black authors. So this book is a young adult book, that's true, but honestly, this story totally transcends just the young adult audience. I think this story is for everyone. In fact, if you are the kind of person that wants to learn more and wants to educate yourself about racism and how to be an anti-racist and how to support people of color, especially in America, but you're really intimidated by the more academic books on racism, the nonfiction books, this is an incredible book to start out with because it's a story that highlights a Black family and the struggles that they go through, the bond they have, the violence they face in their neighborhood, you know, the different obstacles that affect their life that they have to face together. It gives great insight into that. It also gives amazing insight into how a family is supposed to function, and it really models supportive parents, and I think that's awesome. It's a really easy story to understand. It's a really heartfelt story and super important, super enlightening. So pick up this book and read it. It's an easy entry point and a great way to learn a lot about the Black experience.
The next book that I read is The Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor.
Did you say that right?
Yep, I looked it up on the internet. This book is also a young adult book set in Nigeria, written by a Nigerian American immigrant. This one has a very much like Harry Potter-esque feel of like a young girl who is completely unaware of any kind of magical world that surrounds her, and comes to find out that like it would be like Harry Potter if Harry and Ron went to like regular school together, and then Harry discovered that Ron was a wizard this whole time. It was like, oh, whoa, really compelling story. And definitely, you know, I think the last three books I've said, City We Became, Children of Blood and Bone, and The Akata Witch, are probably my top three books that I read over the course of the month. I would highly recommend it for pretty much all ages. It's been a while since I read this one, so there might be... I'm not a parent, so my filter is kind of wonky when it comes to that stuff.
Eric doesn't know what children should and shouldn't read, okay?
So my best recommendation is read it first, and if you think it's okay for your children, I would recommend it.
That's fair. The next book I read is called The House at Riverton by Kate Morton. If you've watched my previous books you should read right now video, which if you haven't, I'll link it down below because it's full of a lot of great book recommendations too. I'm not linking it up there, Scorpy. I talk about Kate Morton. She is one of my favorite authors. She's actually an Australian author that I randomly discovered. Her stories are always focused around a central, usually location or building or some physical representation, and that physical representation connects a couple of different characters in different time settings, and their stories are really woven together throughout her books. And then at the end, you kind of figure out how it all works together. And I wouldn't call it a twist at the end, but more of like a heartbreaking discovery, or just an interesting, she just writes very interestingly, very different than any author that I've read. So this book particularly is a little bit different than her other books. It reminds me of Downton Abbey. It is set at a house, a grand manor, and it talks about the lives of the upstairs family of wealth and privilege, and it talks about the downstairs staff, and kind of they're all woven together by this mysterious, seemingly suicide, potentially murder mystery. So it's very interesting and intriguing, and it all comes together in such a heartbreaking way at the end. That's typically how her books work. So I would for sure recommend her as an author. This is maybe one of my favorite of her books. Clockmaker's Daughter is still her best one, and it's her most recent one, so I recommend that one too, but get all her books. She's a fantastic author.
My next book is another Kindle book. It's The Souls of Black Folk by W.B. Du Bois or Du Bois. I've heard both from credible sources, so...
Take your pick.
Yeah. It's like 100 pages long, super quick read, and also very inspirational while also being very depressing, because it was written by an influential Black man over 100 years ago, and the stuff he's writing about is still very applicable today. Highly recommend it as a read, and it's a, like I said, really quick, short read.
So the next 3 books, my last 3 books and Eric's last 3 books, are books that we actually both read in the month of July. So we're gonna talk together about them, which I just wanna say the fact that you and I read 3 of the same books in 1 month is kind of shocking information.
Yeah.
Eric and I couldn't be more opposite in the things we like, the type of entertainment we seek out, the things that stimulate our brains. Like, we do not pick the same content whatsoever.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first book that we both read this month is How to Be an Anti-Racist.
And this was the first book I read of the month.
It was the second book I read of the month.
By Ibram X. Kendi.
This book is an incredibly important read.
I think I enjoyed this book more than you did, just from a consumption standpoint.
I think so too.
It's very dry in a lot of spots.
I wouldn't call it dry. It's not dry. It's just very academic. Yes. It's a dense read, and it takes all of your brain to comprehend. That doesn't mean it's not worth the read, and it's not incredibly important to read. I learned so freaking much from this book. It's depressing. It's eye-opening.
It does make a point of showing progress, showing the progress that we've made, and just highlighting why we still have a long ways to go.
It has a hopeful ending for sure, and some action steps, and it really teaches you the difference between not being racist and being anti-racist, which I think, especially in today's climate and culture, that's a very important distinction that more people, everyone should operate on the anti-racist side, and not the just not racist.
It's an extremely good book. I'm very much the type of person that likes a dense read with lots of information and facts and like actionable things that you can bring up in a discussion with other people. And Ibram X. Kendi is an academic, and so he very much infuses, the reason I liked it and recommended it to you in the first place is he does infuse his personal story.
Absolutely.
Like, each chapter is about a different topic, and it starts off with like his personal life experience with that topic, and then he gets into the academia side of things.
If you find yourself in the middle of this and struggling to get through, this is what I would recommend you do. He was also a guest on Dax Shepard's podcast called Armchair Expert, and he really explains a lot of the premise behind this book. He highlights some of the key points of it. I would for sure recommend listening to that as the bare minimum, even if you don't think you are the kind of person that can get through such a dense read. And honestly, listening to him on that podcast was what convinced me to finally pick it up and read it.
The next book that we both read is Killers of the Flower Moon. This is a recommendation from my parents. Shout out Randy and Tammy. This is a nonfiction narrative. Like, it's told as though it was an author writing a book, but it's a nonfiction story about the systemic oppression of the Osage people in Osage County in Oklahoma, with oil head rights and how they were taken advantage of, and how a lot of them were murdered in order to get their money and the rights to their oil. And
no one did anything about the murders. In fact, there was active covering up of murders, stealing of millions of dollars of the Osage people's money. It's almost an unbelievable read, in that you keep going, I can't believe this actually happened.
Yeah, I grew up 20 minutes away from where all of this happened, and in all the times I've taken a history class, or Oklahoma history specifically, not once did an educator bring up this. I think we would both recommend reading this. It's a much shorter read than what it looks because like the last third of the book is reference. So if you want to see the actual research that went into it, and there's actual pictures from the time period, and it's great. Very good read.
It's a great historical, enlightening story about racism toward the Osage tribe, and an incredibly important story to be told.
It does read like a narrative. It's not like, I wouldn't call it like a compelling narrative. Like it's not a
I wouldn't call
turner.
it a page turner.
Yeah, definite recommendation.
For sure. The last book is I'm Still Here.
Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness.
By Austin Channing Brown. And I would also recommend following Austin Channing Brown on Instagram. She posts amazing content. And yes, I said she. Her name is Austin. And in the first
chapter of the book.
Chapter of her book, she explains the heartbreaking story of why she was given the name Austin by her parents. She is a Black author, and this book highlights her entire story from childhood to college life, love life, being an adult in the workplace. That was the part of the book that I found most compelling. It reads like a total autobiography. It's very easy to read.
And I would say this one is, I don't want to say harder than How to Be an Anti-Racist, but this one definitely made me feel worse. Like, because there's a whole chapter titled, like, I don't know the exact title, but like The Problem with Nice White People.
Yeah.
And how like you and I think that we're allies and we're doing so much. And this book very much kind of points out, like, you may think that, but probably not. And so it's a great book, very well written. Austin Channing Brown, the way that she writes is just so conversational. Like, I read this book in like a day and a half.
Yeah.
It was a super quick read for me just because it was so easy to get through. So
definitely recommend this book. Get it. Okay, that's it. Those are all the books that we read in the month of July. That was a lot of books. Do you think we'll have this many books in August?
Nope.
Me either. So excited to continue reading through our new stack of books and updating you guys each month on what books we've read, what books we recommend, what books you can skip. Did we have any in this stack that we didn't like that much?
No.
Stick around. Make sure to like this video, and I want them to comment down below one book recommendation for us to read. Because not only do we want to share what we're reading with you guys, but we really want to know what you guys are reading so that we can constantly be getting new books and trying new things. So especially if you have any amazing books that you've read by Black authors, Black women specifically, people of color in general, we would love to support those authors and learn more about those topics to further educate ourselves. So make sure that you comment down below. We want to hear it.
Fill up these bookshelves. Look at all this empty space.
Well,
we need more books.
There's empty space for aesthetic.
Gotta fill it up.
No, we're not filling it up, but
wall to wall.
No
books.
That's not what bookshelves are for. They're for
smash that subscribe button.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for watching. And before this derails any further, we will see you next time. Bye!
Bye.